All right, in this video, we're going to talk about just a little bit of the background for our Unit 4 in risk management and talk about some basic principles of risk management that you can use. In Unit 1, we talked about resource basics, right? We talked about the time value of money, we talked about taxes and some basic principles, we talked about the financial planning life cycle and human capital, kind of laid some basic ideas down. Unit 2, we talked about borrowing, debt, when to use it, what it's for, how to figure out how much it will cost you. Unit 3, we talked about building wealth through investing. How do we do it? When do we do it? When is it appropriate? How much risk should we take? Things like that. So now we have all the pieces we need to create a plan. We know how to figure out, okay, how much should I borrow? Is it worth borrowing? Is borrowing a good idea? Okay, we have enough to know, all right, when should I start investing? Is it worth it? What are the benefits? We have those, so we sat down, figured out, got our plan all together. The problem is life never goes according to plan. So Unit 4 is we're going to take that plan, we're going to wrap it up in a big cozy blanket, and we're going to protect it because nothing ever goes according to plan. And so this whole unit is about what do we do to prevent life from disrupting our plan too badly. So what are we really trying to protect? And what we're really trying to do is make sure that we can maintain our consistent consumption stream, right? We're maintaining a consistent standard of living. That's what we're trying to do. Just like we've been trying to do in every unit, right? That's why we borrow. That's why we invest, is so we can maintain a consistent standard of living. And as risk management is exactly the same. We're trying to maintain that consistent standard of living. So let's say your income takes a dip like this. Let's say you lose your job and your source of income for 3 months due to, I don't know, how about a global pandemic? What happens? Well, where that black curve dips below the purple, that represents a decrease in your standard of living for this year. Now, when you get your job back and things get back to normal, your standard of living will go back up, right? Things will go back to normal. But we would like to prevent a lot of this pain, right? If you've lost your job now, or your parents have, it's going to cause a lot of pain and a little heartache. In the short term, we want to prevent that with a good risk management plan. And we can have an adequate emergency fund, right? Disability insurance. There's a few things that we can do, primarily being the emergency fund, having an adequate emergency fund to prevent this dramatic hit to our standard of living, even if it's only a short-term hit. But what if it looks like this? What if you're going along, your career's going great, and bam, you have an accident and you're physically unable to do your job anymore? And this happens, by the way, even if you have a desk job. A lot of people feel like, well, I'm just sitting at a desk typing. How can I be disabled from that? It would have to be something extreme, like my hands get chopped off or something. But even then, people without hands are able to work on computers all the time. It takes them a little bit longer. They have some workarounds, right? There's some techniques and tools that they have. But yeah, that's fine. But even if that's not the case, you could just be in a car accident and suffer a back injury. There's lots of people with back injuries from car accidents who can't sit at a desk for long enough periods of time to effectively hold down an office job. So you can become disabled even if you just work at a desk. And what does that do? Okay, that disrupts your lifetime earnings. All future years of earnings are going to be lower because you've lost the ability to do the job you used to do. And that's going to have to mean that your consumption falls down. And your standard of living shifts down. Okay, and that shift down hurts. Okay, it's the transition from good times to not as good times that really hurts, much more than the absolute level. If you always have a low standard of living, that's one thing, but to go from a good standard to a poorer standard, that hurts a lot, and we want to try to prevent that. Okay, and there are ways to do that, which we'll talk about in this unit. Okay, so what are we going to try to protect? We're going to break things into 3 categories, okay? We're going to try to protect yourself, your stuff, and the people that you love. Those are the 3 categories we're going to put things into. So what do we mean by protecting yourself? Okay, we mean protecting your human capital, your ability to earn a living. That's what that really means. Okay? And we do that through using health insurance, disability insurance, and long-term care insurance. Those are the 3 types of insurance we're going to discuss in regards to protecting your ability to earn income. Okay, what kind of stuff are we going to protect? basically any assets, your house, your car, your investments, your computer, your phone, right? There are ways to protect almost any kind of asset. And we're going to talk about some of those techniques in insurance policies. Okay, how? Each type of asset has its insurance specific to it. So you have car insurance for cars, home insurance for homes, right? If you have a fine painting by a remarkable artist, okay, you can get an insurance policy just for that painting. And so we're going to talk about home and auto insurance specifically to talk about how to protect those two significant assets. Finally, when we say your loved ones, who are we referring to? We usually specifically mean your dependents, the people who depend on you financially. Most of the time, this is your kids, right? Children depend on their parents' ability to earn money. The parents' paycheck buys the kids groceries, right? Those are dependents. It doesn't have to be kids. It can be non-working spouses or disabled spouses. It can be elderly parents who may depend on you. Really, anyone who depends on your paycheck is your dependent in this context. And we'll protect them by getting life insurance. Okay, so those are the basic topics that we're going to cover in this unit. So let's talk about some basic fundamental principles of risk management. Okay, step one in the process of risk management is identify your sources of risk. These will be your exposures and your perils, right? That's talked about in the readings. You need to figure out, where could I lose money? My house, my car, right? My health, what could I lose? Once you've figured out where you could lose money, where those losses could occur, you need to estimate how severe they're going to be and how likely it is to occur. And when you know those things, you can calculate the expected loss. We'll talk about expected loss in just a minute here. But basically, you need to say, okay, I have a car. That's a source of risk. That's an exposure. How likely am I to get in a car accident? And how much will that accident cost me if I do? Once you know those things, or have a sense of those things, then you have a sense for how dangerous this potential loss is. And once you know how dangerous it is, then you can make a choice on how you're going to handle it. Okay. So, expected loss. What is that? Okay, expected loss is the likelihood that something's going to happen times how much it will cost you if it happens. And so let's say your chance of getting a parking ticket is 1 in 10. Every time you park on campus, somewhere you shouldn't park and you don't have a permit to park there, let's say by experience you've learned that it's about 1 in 10, right? Every 10 times you park there, you'll get 1 ticket. Let's say you figured that out. And every time you get a ticket, they charge you $25. So the expected loss of a parking ticket is 1/10 times $25, which is $2.50. That's the expected loss. In other words, that's kind of like saying, what's the average cost? Every time you park where you don't have a permit, you're either going to get charged $0 or $25, right? You're going to get a ticket or not. So you're not going to pay $2.50 to park there. You're going to pay 0 or $25. And if you're trying to think, how do I work this into my budget, right? How do I make sure I can afford a parking ticket if I need it? Or even better, just deciding, hey, is it worth it to park somewhere where I don't have a permit? You can use the expected loss. So if you can pay to park somewhere for $1, then you should go and pay to park rather than taking your chances parking in a lot where you don't have a permit. Because the expected loss here is telling you that on average, you're paying $2.50 every time you park somewhere you don't have a permit. So if you have an alternative that costs less than that, then this is telling you you should expect to pay less money just paying for the parking up front than you would if you were paying parking tickets. And for another example, let's say you've done some research and figured out that the chance of your house being destroyed or burning down in any given year is 1 in 1,000. But if it burns down, it'll cost you $100,000 to rebuild. So the expected loss here would be 1 in 1,000. 1 divided by 1,000 is 0.001. Times $100,000 gives you a $100 expected loss. So on average, $100 a year is what you're exposed to. Now, we can compare these two risks. Okay, your parking ticket expected loss is $2.50. Your home's expected loss is $100. Which one is the greater threat? The answer is your home burning down. And the reason it's a greater threat is because it has a higher expected loss. Okay, so that's the first way that expected loss is helpful. The higher the expected loss, the greater the peril, the greater the risk, the threat that you face there, and the more likely it is that you're going to need to do something about it. Take action, buy insurance, or use another technique. Now, the problem with expected loss, though, is that individuals don't really have access to these numbers. You could probably figure out your parking ticket numbers just by start parking where you shouldn't and see how often you get a ticket, right? You could probably figure that out. But what's the chance that your house is going to burn down? What's the chance you'll be destroyed in a tornado or an earthquake or a flood? And how much will it cost if it is flooded or if it does burn? Most people don't have access to those numbers. I don't know those numbers for my own house. So I can't. It's actually physically impossible for me to calculate the expected loss on my home if I don't have those numbers. So what's the point then? Well, the point is that you may not have those numbers precisely, but someone else does. The insurance company. Insurance companies know these numbers very well. The existence of their business depends on them knowing these numbers correctly. And that's how they determine how much your insurance policy is going to cost. So if you want to go and get a homeowner's insurance policy to protect your home in case of a loss, you can think about the expected loss formula. How likely is it to occur? How much will it cost if it does? If either one of those goes up, then the expected loss goes up. And the higher the expected loss, the greater the risk. And the greater the risk, the more the insurance will cost. So if you're thinking, okay, I have a car, or I'm deciding between two cars maybe, what will make my insurance cheaper? How can I get cheaper insurance? Well, you can reduce the likelihood of an accident, right? That's why some insurance companies let you plug a little gizmo into your car and it tells them if you're driving safely, right? Driving safely, as they define it, reduces the chances of an accident, and that will make your insurance less expensive. Or you can reduce the cost, how much it will cost if I get into an accident, right? So let's say you're driving a Ferrari and you get a minor fender bender. Let's say you have to replace like the side mirror. Well, the side mirror on a Ferrari is I don't know, but it's probably like $5,000. It's probably some crazy expensive amount of money. But if you're just driving a beat up old Volvo and your side mirror gets knocked off, you could probably pick up a fresh one for $100, right? Like, that's a reduction in severity. Trading in your Ferrari for a Volvo is a reduction in severity of a loss, and that will reduce the cost, right? The cost to insure. And so it should come as no surprise that insurance on a Volvo is cheaper than insurance on a Ferrari, because we've managed that risk and we've reduced the amount of risk we've taken by reducing the severity of a loss should it occur. And that's how expected loss is useful for individuals, right? You can't technically calculate it most of the time because you don't know the numbers. But understanding the formula, likelihood times cost, either one of those things goes up, it's going to cost you more money to buy insurance. Now, I want to be careful. I want to make sure that you understand and keep in mind throughout this unit that insurance is only one way to manage risk. There are multiple ways. We're going to focus most of our conversations on insurance because that's where the most technical information is at. That's where people need the most information. But never forget that these other techniques exist. Okay, so we have 4 methods, right? We can avoid or reduce risk. Okay, this is selling the Ferrari. Okay, that's a risk reduction. Trading in the Ferrari for a Volvo reduces risk. Okay, that's an effective risk management technique. Avoiding risk is just to eliminate it altogether. So just sell your car and don't own one. Right? If you don't own a car, you can't get in a car accident, so there's no risk of car accident. Okay? Now, avoiding makes sense for some risks. Some risks you don't have to take. For example, you could procrastinate your homework assignment. You could. If you do that, chances are you'll be just fine. You'll sit down to do it Monday morning, and when it's due, and you'll sit down, and your internet will work, and your computer will work, and no one will be sick, and nothing bad will happen, and you'll get the homework done, and you'll get it submitted, and you'll be just fine. But there's a chance that your internet will go out, your computer will crash, your dog will get sick, you'll get sick. Something will happen. You'll get stuck in traffic, so you can't get home in time to do the home. Right? There's lots of things that could disrupt your plan. And so procrastinating is a way of increasing risk. There's no benefit. What's the benefit of waiting? What do you get? Most of the time, nothing. Occasionally, there may be good reasons to do it, like you have other assignments that are due sooner and you got to get those done. But waiting and procrastinating opens you up to an exposure there. The risk that something will disrupt your ability to complete the assignment. You don't know what's going to disrupt it. You don't know if it will be disrupted. Maybe it only gets disrupted one time in 10, but that's enough to still have it happen, right? So how could you manage this risk? Well, the technique I suggest is avoiding it. Just don't procrastinate. If you have 2 weeks to do the assignment, do it in the 2 weeks. Don't wait until the last minute, because doing it early completely avoids the risk, right? If I submitted a week early, I sit down a week early to do my homework, and my Wi-Fi goes out for 3 days, I'm fine, right? I still have time to get it done on time without any risk. So getting it done early is a form of avoiding risk. That's an example of avoiding risk as a risk management tool. Okay, you can retain the risk. So you can just say, you know what? There's a chance it's going to happen. I'm just going to plan on it. I'm going to make sure I have my emergency fund is prepared to manage that type of risk. I'm just going to hold on to it and be prepared for when it happens. I'm ready to go. Okay, you can control losses. This makes it less likely that the risk is going to occur. So this would be like slowing down, wearing your seatbelt, right? Locking your doors makes it less likely that you'll get robbed, things like that. You're not necessarily avoiding it entirely. You still have a car, right? But you're just driving it more carefully, so you're less likely to get in an accident. That's controlling losses. And finally, you can transfer it. You can make it someone else's problem. This is insurance, right? If I get in a car accident, my insurance company pays, not me. So the risk of me, the loss that I face by getting in a car accident is now the insurance company's risk. They're concerned about that. So I have transferred my risk to them. And that's why they charge me, right? You don't want to take risk. Do you want risk? If your friend comes to you and says, hey, I want to go ride my dirt bike this weekend. If I break my arm, though, I want you to pay for it. I mean, how would you respond to that? I mean, personally, my response would be one of two things. I'd either say, I love you, dude, but no, I'm not going to take your risk. Or I might say, I will, but tell you what, you give me $300, and then in case, if you do break your arm, I'll pay for it. But if you don't, I keep the $300. That's what insurance does. You pay them, and if you have a loss, they cover it for you. Okay? That's transferring risk. Remember, insurance is transferring risk. It's only one of our 4 techniques. So think about using the other 3 techniques throughout your life. Is there a way I can manage this risk, or do I need insurance for it? Now, this table gives us a sense of what we should do. So if you have something that's high severity, costs a lot when it happens, but low frequency, doesn't happen very often, like dying. Right? You die, your family loses your entire lifetime earnings. Every dollar you would have earned after this point, they lose. That's severe, high severity. But it's not very likely to happen, right? You're 25, 30, 35, 40, 50, anybody under 70, it's really pretty unlikely that you'll die in any given year. So it's low frequency, not likely to happen, but if it does, it costs you a lot. That is the perfect instance to buy some insurance, right? And so we have life insurance for just that type of thing. Right? So there may be other risks that cost a lot but don't happen very often that you want to cover and make sure that you have insurance for. If it's low severity, low frequency, doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it doesn't cost very much, you retain that. You just build it into your budget. So like speeding tickets, right? You may only get 2 or 3 speeding tickets in your life. You may get 0 speeding tickets. I don't know. And you don't know either, and that's the whole point. You don't know. So we prepare just in case. So, let's say you don't get lots of speeding tickets, and they're not terribly expensive when you get them. It's not like thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay. That would be low severity, low frequency. You're going to retain that risk. You're going to say, you know what, I'm just going to have my emergency fund ready. If I get a speeding ticket, I'll pay it out of my emergency fund and be okay with it. If it's low severity but high frequency, it happens a lot, but it doesn't cost you very much. Couple of options in that case. Okay, so you could just retain it, just budget for it, just say, you know what, it's going to happen, and I'm just working into my budget. I'm just going to plan on it every month. I'm just going to set aside X number of dollars to pay for it. Or if you can try to control the frequency, right? Do something to reduce how likely it is to happen. That's not always an option. It depends on what the risk is, but if it's available, it can be helpful. Now, if you have something that's high severity and high frequency, something that costs a lot, but you need to do it, it happens regularly or a lot. Okay, you can purchase insurance in that case, but it's going to be expensive insurance. If you can avoid it or otherwise minimize it, you should try. But a lot of times, these types of things can't be avoided, can't be controlled. And there is no insurance for it because it's too expensive. No one can afford it. So things that fall into this category tend to be things that society helps us out with. We have disability insurance and Social Security, and there tends to be social safety nets and social programs to help with things like that, okay, because they can be too expensive. But if you can in any way control, avoid, or reduce those expenses, you should take them because this is going to cause a lot of damage to your finances. Now, you can combine techniques. You don't have to say, I'm going to do just one. You can do a combination. In fact, most of the time you will combine techniques. Okay, so for example, let's say you buy car insurance that has a $1,000 deductible. The deductible is the amount of money you have to pay up front before the insurance kicks in, starts covering things for you. So that $1,000 is deductible is retention. You've retained $1,000 of risk, and the rest you've transferred. The insurance company will take the expenses over $1,000. So you've retained $1,000, transferred the rest, and then if you wear a seatbelt and avoid speeding, you've reduced the likelihood of a loss and how much it will cost. Right? Wearing a seatbelt reduces your physical injuries, so it's less likely to have expensive medical bills associated with an accident. Okay, so in this case, you've done 3 techniques. You retained, you transferred, and you reduced. The only one you haven't done is avoid. You still have the car. Another example, you want to transfer the risk of losing your income in case you die. So you buy life insurance to transfer that. But then you also stop eating French fries, start going to the gym, improving your health to reduce the likelihood of dying. Okay, those things will help with that. And so you've transferred risk, most of it, but you've also done some risk reduction. So you're using multiple techniques at the same time again for the same risk. All right, one last point. First, keep in mind that insurance is protection, not for making money. Okay, some people are like, hey, I've paid $1,000 for my car insurance policy, and it's not paying me back. This is terrible. You don't buy insurance to make money. You buy insurance to cover you in case. A lot of people feel like if they buy an insurance policy and they never use it, that they've wasted their money. Right? I mean, think about it. You've been paying let's say on your 65th birthday, you look back in your life, you're like, I've been paying car insurance for 45 years, and I've never gotten in an accident, and it's never paid me a dime. Well, that was stupid. I shouldn't have had insurance. What a waste. Okay, that's the sentiment. It's an understandable sentiment. It makes sense why we think that way, but that's a mistake. That's not what you're getting when you buy insurance. You're not paying for it, hoping to use it. On the contrary, right? You buy insurance hoping to never need to use it. If you've been driving for 40 years and never been in an accident, that's not a failure. That's success. That's good, right? Like, let me give you another example. Let's say you're turning 65 and your life insurance policy is about to expire. Do you go commit suicide so it will pay you? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you, right? When you think of it that way, oh, I got to get my money out of this investment, right? This insurance policy, I got to get my money out of it. When you use that example, it seems kind of silly, doesn't it? What you're buying is a good night's sleep. What you're buying is a reduction in uncertainty. What you're buying is the feeling that, hey, you know what? I can go drive my car because I know if I get in a car accident, I'm not going to be financially ruined. That is what insurance is for. That is what it's giving you. Okay. Now, you want the policy to pay you if it should. If you get in an accident, your auto policy should pay you. That's the expectation. If they don't, that's bad. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't buy investment. You shouldn't buy an insurance policy planning on it paying you, expecting it to pay you, wanting it to pay you. You want to use it only if necessary, but hope it's not necessary. Does that make sense? So a lot of people feel like if their policy hasn't been used, that it was wasted, and that's not true. That's not true. It's buying you assurance, protection, in case, right? Just in case. Now, you shouldn't expect to get more out of a policy than you put in. Okay? Insurance companies have this principle called indemnity, which means they try to only repay you the amount that you lost. So if you total your car and it's gone, they should pay you only the amount it will cost you to get a new car, to replace the car. If they pay you more, then great, lucky you. That's on them. But if you try to lie or cheat or do something where you get more money from the insurance company than you lost, that's called fraud. Okay? And it is punishable potentially by jail time. Okay? So don't lie, don't cheat. Just try to get reimbursed for the amount that you lost. If they happen to give you more through their own error, then that's on them, right? That's for them to decide how much they should pay you. But don't try to get more by lying or cheating. It's bad, okay? It's a crime in this country. Okay, and that's it for our introduction. So let's move on to the next video. We'll start talking about protecting yourself.